Welcome to another Lewisburg Community TV video. This is episode 25. Welcome to Tertulia.
The bookshop like no other.
We have a very special episode today because we have Jeanine Cummins.
American Dirt.
Jeanine is an international bestseller. It's been the top book that we've sold in our bookshop and in many other bookshops in Ireland and around the world. So we're going to hand you over to Jeanine, who's going to talk about her book and tell us a little bit more about her story and inspiration. So over to Jeanine.
Hi, Jeanine. So we're here today. Welcome to Tertulia to talk to Jeanine Cummins, author of American Dirt. This is the latest version, which has just come out. We were closed last year, I guess, when you just came out, when the first version was issued. But despite that, it was still our top seller in the bookshop in the year just gone, which is quite remarkable, really. And I suppose there's a couple of reasons for that. For us, is one that it's quite unique. Myself and Neil both read the book because we have different tastes, first of all, in books, but also there's so many books to read and to recommend to customers, so we kind of share them out. We rarely read the same book, so this was quite unusual that we both actually read this book. We loved it so much that we both read it, and I suppose we loved it because it's a fantastic piece of fiction, and we love it for that reason, but also it's the message and a book that we felt everyone should read. So that's part of, I suppose, why we sold so many, because we always recommended it as that it's a story we should all be reading, really.
And we've both been to Mexico.
So I suppose today we just ask you to explain to our listeners, or what do we call them, our TV watchers, just what the story is about. Is that it's a Mexican story, but you'll be able to tell us what the whole story is.
Well, I will try. It's always one of the toughest things, I think, to try to distill this 100,000-page work into a nugget that's easily digestible. And it's funny when I hear people describe it as a Mexican story, because it never occurred to me that it was a Mexican story, although it is set in Mexico mostly. I wrote 2 versions of this book that were not set in Mexico before I came up with the final version. So it didn't dawn on me until quite late in the game that that's true, but really, I think the thing is, it's a story about a bookseller, much like yourselves. Lydia is a bookseller who lives in Acapulco, Mexico, and she has a beautiful life, a comfortable, happy life. She's married to a wonderful man. They have a beautiful son together, 8-year-old Luca. And on page 1 of the book, their family has a horrific act of violence leveled against them. And Lydia and Luca have no choice but to run for their lives. So all at once, they sort of fall out of their happy, comfortable, middle-class existence, and they become migrants in an instant. And it's the story of their journey. So, when I was writing the book, I was thinking about these ideas about why people very often feel that they have no other option but to leave their home place. No one wants to be a migrant. Very often people are making that decision because the factors that are leading them to take that decision are so overwhelming that they really have no choice. And so I wanted to write a story that would sort of ask the reader to put themselves in the shoes of the migrant and really consider the notion of being in a place that begins to collapse around you. And if you found yourself in that position, what would you do to save your child? And although the characters in this novel happen to be Mexican and Central American, the fact is, I think for me, kind of the whole point of the book is that they could be anyone. They could be from anywhere. They could be from Syria or Houston, Texas. They find themselves in an untenable situation and they have to leave. And I think the answer to the question, what would you do, is the same across every cultural boundary. If your child was in danger, you would do anything to save that kid. So that's what the novel is about, that bond between parents and their children, and what we would do to save the people we love.
Yeah, and yeah, as you said, it is about parental love and what you would do. And as you mentioned, Luca is the 8-year-old character, is the son in the book. Maybe just to say some more about him, because obviously as the book goes on, you know, there's so many different sides to him, and at times you kind of can't believe he's only 8. All you know, his life, not to mention what's happened to him, but the way he thinks and the way he responds to what's going on. Yeah, it's quite a story just in itself. Maybe just to say some more about him and where he came from, or yeah.
He's actually based on my nephew,
Ah.
Eamon Lopez. My nephew is called Eamon Lopez. How's that for an American name? He, you know, Eamon was about 8 years old when I started writing this novel, and he is now 15. And he's a remarkable kid. His mind is just spectacular. The way that his brain works is not so typical. And he is incredibly thoughtful and considerate. He was late to speak. He didn't really even babble until he started speaking at about 4 years of age. And he, you know, he's incredibly bright, incredibly gifted in these ways that are sometimes like a little frightening, you know. And, I think Luca has a lot of those qualities, and he's also a kid who maybe he's an old soul. And, you know, I talk about their relationship in terms of Lydia, the mother, doing whatever it takes to save her child. But in actual fact, as I think is often the case in real life, it's equally true that he saves her over and over and over again. Maybe most powerfully just by the simple fact of his existence. He provides for her the desire to survive, something which otherwise may be unsurvivable. She may, I think oftentimes as a mother, you don't even question that will. There's something primal about it. She never stops to ask herself whether or not she wants to survive. If it would be worse to survive and have to live with the trauma of what she's experienced, or not, because all she thinks is that she has to get him to safety. So, and then there's also these moments in the book where it's not so metaphorical. He really stands up and saves her. He puts himself physically, bodily in harm's way between his mother and a threat to be the shield for her. And he's a remarkable kid, I think.
Yeah, and how was it writing that, I suppose, yeah, to some of the parts that, it's so powerful at times that you think, oh my God, I suppose I didn't know you then, but, thinking, oh my God, what was it like for the writer writing this, because you do, and I know that's kind of what you wanted to do. You really are taken inside the, not, I don't know, inside the minds, but inside the mind and the life of that mother and the son and what they were going through. And we are taken with them. I mean, they call it, don't they, the runaway bestseller, because it is, it's just.
Well, it gets your heart going.
It just, yeah, at times. And there was a times I'm like, I have to put this down. So, what was it like writing that? Was it like that for you, writing it? Or maybe you paced yourself? I don't know. But it certainly came across as like, whoa, okay.
Thank you. I don't know. I think probably like all writers, I rob a lot of the material that appears in the book out of my own life and my own psychology. And I should say that at the time that I wrote this novel, I was grieving for my dad, who died very suddenly. He was out to dinner with my mom and some friends, and he died in the restaurant at the table. And that happened the week before the 2016 presidential election. So I had a very strong sense at that time of despair and a strong feeling that all the decency had sort of gone out of the world at once. And all of that grief is poured into this book, So I never stopped necessarily to think about, I think a lot of what you guys talk about, that sort of propulsive feeling of the plot is thanks to my editor who helps, you know, layer things back in and make sure that you're pulling the thread of that threat through the book sufficiently so that the momentum keeps going in the right direction. But underneath that, I think the real engine of this book is that family love and those bonds between parents and their kids, and how powerful they are, you know. So all of that stuff definitely fed into, I think, the final product. And it wasn't the sort of thing that I stopped and thought about while I was writing it, as I often don't, you know. It just sort of comes out of me in that way. I was 3.5 years in to this project when my dad died. So I had 2 failed drafts under my belt, and it was a mess. The book was not working. And it really was that moment that changed everything for me, that provided, I think, the emotional landscape of the novel.
Yeah,
It's
well,
amazing. It comes across, isn't it?
the pace, God, yeah, the pace is definitely there. And you said as well that you like, you know, you wanted it to move people. I think I heard you say in one, you know, something that I read about, you know, that you wanted the novel to move people. I suppose kind of what, maybe to say some more about that, what that means for you, really.
Yeah, well, when I started writing the book, it was 2013. It was like midway through a Barack Obama presidency. And I don't know about you guys, but I barely remember what Earth felt like in 2013. It was so different.
Yeah.
We were in such a different moment culturally. And, you know, I started writing it because I felt like this was a subject that people were not paying attention to in meaningful ways. And in this country, where we were having conversations about migrants, and specifically about Latino migrants, they were very superficial and driven way more by policy than by any humanitarian concern. And I was just frustrated by the tenor of those conversations. And the media coverage. It was just very, it felt polarizing and unhelpful, and I felt like devoid of humanity, actually. So I wanted to write a novel that would be a sort of invitation for the reader to put themselves in the shoes, and even more intimately in the skin of someone who finds themselves in this position, and to really consider, not on a policy level, but on a human level, what is, like, you know, I think there's a lot of gray area in the world, but there are certain things that are still black and white. There are certain things that are still right and wrong. And the way that we are treating and continue to treat migrants in this country is deplorable. And you know, I think that fiction can be a really wonderful portal, a really great tool for creating empathy for people who the reader may otherwise be sort of tempted to write off or not engage with or think of as other. And then, you know, when you can read a story that you can relate to about this person that you've never really thought about putting yourself in their shoes before. I know that I've read books like that before in my life and felt a window sort of blown open in my mind. And that's always what I hope to do as a writer.
Yeah, and it does do that. It does do that because, yeah, as you said, it's got the empathy that fiction brings anyway. You know, all fiction, as you said, brings empathy in the way that it makes our mind switch. But to do this story in a fictional way, and certainly the feedback we got from our readers wasn't it, that people, you know, some of them saying, you know, I never quite thought about, you know, well, Mexican immigrants in particular, and you know what they go through. As you said, it's something people park to the side and just get on with their lives. So definitely, the feedback we got was, yeah, it made people think twice. And I mean, you said that too, about you wanted to build a bridge. You know, you wanted it to be a kind of bridge. And I said, well, it is, but I suppose what can we do differently, or what would you want people to do differently after reading the book? You know, or is there something people can do to participate or engage more?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there are the really simple things that everyone knows about, but that might not feel as satisfying. as the answers that they want. And that is, first, give money, donate money to organizations like the International Rescue Committee, who are just quietly doing the work of saving lives in the borderlands every single day. And, you know, there is a list of resources on my website as well. Some of the organizations that I visited and that I worked with when I was conducting the research for this book that are just doing tremendously important, crucial, life-saving work. You know, one of the organizations is a tiny shoestring operation out of Southern California called Water Stations. And these are folks who drive out into the desert. They specifically locate, using Border Patrol maps and information, places where migrants have died in the desert. And they go there and they leave water in those locations in hopes that no one will die there again.
Yeah.
There are so many brave and astonishing people on the ground who are already doing this work. And what they really need is funding. What they really need is support. There is a much bigger answer too, which is that we need to find the political will in this country to fix the problem, because there are very simple things we could do immediately to alleviate some of this problem. But unfortunately, I think the topic of immigration is being used as a sort of political talking point and pawn in a way that sort of discourages the politicians from seeking meaningful change.
Yeah, and it's the world over, isn't it, Jeanine? It's not just, you know,
Yeah.
that part of, you know, your part of the world. It's, you know, we have it here. You know, we have Syrians coming here.
Here in Westport, there's some.
In Westport, there was some programs, but you know, there is still a narrative around it. And as you said, we want a world where people don't have to go through what you know is described in your book. This was the feeling after reading it. You just go, oh my God, like what. And anger, I suppose there was a bit of anger in me too, that, you know, people have to go through this. This is just, what a world are we living in?
Yeah, it's a global crisis for sure.
Oh,
It's not
it is.
specific to any one country or any one region. And I think one really fascinating thing that I learned so many fascinating and important things while I was researching this novel. But one of the women who I talked with at length was, she was at the time the chair of the Chicano Studies Department at San Diego State University. And she talked to me a lot about her early work being founded on the idea that people should have the right to migrate. If you are born in a place where your life is not tenable, you should have the absolute basic human right to go somewhere where you can make a good life. But she said, as her scholarship sort of evolved, she had changed her thinking, and that her new sort of premise was that people should have the right to not have to migrate. They should have the human right to be able to stay in their beloved home place, in their own culture, with their own family and their language. You know, migration should not be compulsory under any circumstances. It should be a choice that people make. And unfortunately, right now, because of so many factors in the symbiotic relationship of all the countries around the world, and you know how many of the resources are going to the rich countries and leaving developing countries devastated, really, we have this tremendous inequity. And for that reason, migration is most often compulsory these days. So I think that I don't know what the answer is. My personal answer is, like, write a novel, get people talking, hopefully engage people in the real world conversations to transfer that empathy onto the people who really need it in the real world. And then, you know, hopefully people a lot smarter than I am will go digging for the solutions that we need.
Yeah. And you did achieve that definitely with the book. You've definitely
Well,
started many conversations, and the book itself as a piece, as we said in the beginning, as a piece of fiction, as a work of fiction, is amazing. You know, it's an amazing story to read just for itself, you know, regardless of the fact that it's a brilliant content.
And we'd hope that maybe with the man from Mayo now in charge of the White House, you never know, things might get a little bit better, hopefully.
Yeah.
You know, he's only been there a few days, well, a few weeks. So hopefully things will get better. You know, we
I
wait and
am
see.
hopeful. I am hopeful. He's the second Mayo Joe in my life. Actually, maybe the third Mayo Joe in my life. So yeah, I have a lot of hope for days ahead.
Yeah, well, we hope to see you and the man from the White House and the other Joe here soon
At some stage.
in Westport.
Yes, please God. I hope we'll all be able to travel again soon. And first stop, County Mayo. We'll be back.
Perfect. That's what we like to hear.
And Jeanine, are you working on anything else? Are we allowed to ask that, or is there some other project?
Finally, I have a satisfying answer to that question. It was like my most dreaded question for many months, but now I have just started working on the new novel. I can't say much about it yet because it's literally 5 pages right now, but I'm really excited about it. And I that was not a foregone conclusion after the experience of publishing in American Dirt. It took me a minute to hit on an idea that felt really exciting, and I'm really thrilled to finally be working on it. So
That's great. That sounds great.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
look forward to seeing that when you're ready, of course.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
hopefully you'll pop into the shop and give us a chat.
At some stage.
you can count on it. I will be there for sure.
Oh, thank
brilliant.
you, Jeanine.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks, Jeanine. Fantastic. I love this book.
Yeah, and we hope to sell even more copies when we're open. Bye for now.
Goodbye.